We take the supplementary questions for the earlier PQs as well as these. Ms. Cheng Li Hui.
I have two supplementary questions. It was reported that the server was also accessed by several other IP addresses. What do we know about these addresses? Access, is it by foreigners or locals? And will we be pursuing any actions on them? Do they have the information on the blood donors as well? And for those who failed to donate their blood due to illnesses, can this sensitive information be accessed? Thank you.
On Ms. Ching's latter question, that information was not on the server that was compromised. Only registration-related information was on that server. And if I can just cite for Ms. Ching this relevant portion from the vendor's statement, it says that the information that was on that server were NRIC, gender, number of blood donations, dates of the last 3 blood donations, and in some cases, blood type, height, and weight. As for the first point, the unauthorized access from various locations, that's still being looked into, and when we have a fuller position on this and have more clarity, we'll provide those answers.
Ms. William.
Got 3 supplementary questions for Minister Iswaran. The first is I'm glad to hear that he confirmed that the private sector vendor Secure Solutions Group is actually governed by the PDPA and that PDPC is looking into their conduct. So my first question will be, is the PDPC going to wait for the outcome of the HSA investigation and then follow on from there, or is it concurrent? Second question is, it was mentioned that Prime Minister has now convened cross-government committee chaired by DPM2 to look into standards of government IT security. So does this confirm that the government is actually not satisfied and that the standards so far have been wanting in the public sector? Finally, the third question, which is an interesting one, is Minister's answer to NMP Kueh's question about financial penalties on organizations. He mentioned that it was not meaningful to fine public agencies because the fine would in the end come from the public purse. But can the central government not operate on the premise that no additional money is going to be provided to public agencies to pay fines, and therefore the agency will just have to cope with cuts somewhere else to pay these fines, whether it is from bonuses of senior management or whatever it is? Because there's still an important signaling effect that the government is prepared to, as an organization, to abide by the same standards it expects of small businesses.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for her questions. Firstly, on whether the PDPC's investigation will be concurrent, the answer is yes, but clearly it will have to be informed by what is happening also in some of the other activities because they have some interrelated factors, but the answer is the investigations will proceed concurrently. The second question is what does the establishment of the Public Sector Data Security Review Committee mean? I think the member is trying to score a political point here, and I want to make it categorically clear. The government has been working, and that's why I said so in my answer, consistently working at improving data security standards. And there's a list of things that we've been doing over the years, and I think this has been explained in the House many times in response to the members' questions and that of many other members as well. The key point here is that because there has been a series of these incidents in recent times, the Prime Minister and the government have assessed that we need to take a holistic look again. That does not mean that what we have is inadequate or lacking, but what it does mean is we should ensure that we put total effort to ensure that leave no stone unturned in ensuring the highest standards are met in the public sector when it comes to data security. And if there's something that is to be learned, whether it's from best practices in the private sector or from global companies, that is something we'll be very happy to learn from and incorporate in the government's practices. And finally, on the point on financial penalties, and the member makes a point about signaling effect. Well, I would say that first of all, in fact, I think the term own self, check own self was coined by a member of her party. And so if you find yourself you do ask the question, what is the signaling effect there? It's far important that the signaling effect is that you are taking this issue seriously and holding relevant people accountable. So that is why, in the way we go about this, the penalties are focused on the individuals, officers, who have made decisions or taken actions which were deemed to be not compliant, and therefore there are the consequences that I spelled out. Now, having said that, I think when you take action against an organization, the public sector, the reputational impact on that organization and its leadership is significant. And I think the member will concede that that in itself is also a major signaling point, because no organization, public or private, wants to have its reputation tarnished. But having said that, we are prepared to look at all means to ensure there's clear accountability and ensure that in the public sector we have the highest standards of data security. And that is why this committee has been set up, and we will be open to suggestions. And if the member has interesting ideas on this, we'll be happy to hear from her.
Ms. Arinkwe?
That we have the various acts to impose a high standard of responsibility on public agencies. However, upon reviewing that, there seems to be a lack of clarity in this act regarding accountability for data breaches. The focus seems to be on misuse of data. So can Minister clarify? My second SQ is, Minister informed the House that the public agencies have regular mandatory internal audits in place to ensure public agencies comply with these standards for data protection and security of ICT systems. In that case, why are these potential lapses not surfaced during previous internal audit checks? Thank you.
When you refer, may I just seek a clarification, Minister, from the member?
Please.
When you say the Act doesn't refer to data breaches, only data misuse, are you referring to the Public Sector Governance Act, or are you referring to PDPA?
I'm referring to the Public Sector Governance Act, Official Secrets Act, Income Tax Act, and Infectious Disease Act.
Yes, and have you also looked at the Instruction Manual, number 8? Because I think when you look at them holistically, it will be clear that the data, the issues with data, whether it is a breach or misuse, and one can argue that there's a kind of a continuum here. But let me assure you, whether it's a data breach, because when you have a breach of data, you have to establish why it occurred, right? And if it's because of misuse, there will be a certain set of actions. If it's because your systems were not in place, it has to result in a different set of actions to correct the systemic errors. And if there were certain people accountable for that systemic error, then they have to be held to account as well. So I think there's a flow in the way this will proceed in terms of action against government organizations. Second point on regular IT audits, why didn't they throw up such issues in the past? I think that's it's an age-old question. You can have audits. I think it's not just in IT. You have it in financial audits. You have got quality audits, but you still have incidents. This is because it's human beings running the system, and from time to time it can happen. I think what's important is that when they occur, we learn from these incidents and set them right, and be transparent about what we are doing and how we are going about it.
Associate Professor Danugo. Mr. Dunn.
Question for SMS Edwin Tong. Is the SMS able to answer any aspect of my questions?
Can the member elaborate on what other aspects have not been answered?
No, on my question, I'm not sure my question has been answered.
Mr. Dennis Tan's questions relate to the circumstances in which the information was placed on the server, how it is that there was access that was gained to the data, and whether there was a breach of any law. Those are all matters that were covered by the investigations that are currently ongoing, and to the extent possible, when this has been ascertained, we'll provide those information.